Alright, hello and welcome everyone to a Dagath builds refresh. For those of you that watched the recent tier list before the most recent update, you'll know that during that I did some testing that kind of revealed a new Dagath build to me that is a bit more effective than the classic cavalry many horses variant of the way to play her. So we're going to talk about it. So first and foremost, I do have a bunch of shards in Dagath. First of all, 2 yellow shards have a parkour velocity and a casting speed. Casting speed is nice, not necessary, and obviously parkour speed is always to taste, so you can totally forego those, no problem. This blue shard I have is armor. This does have like the capacity to health tank a bit, and this helps it out, gives it about like 20% more DR, but you're not going to notice like a colossal difference, especially at higher levels, with what this is going to add to the performance of the build, so definitely not needed, but a lot of us do have blue shards kicking around. And if you don't have yellow shards around but just want to slot something in on her and you have a bunch of blue shards, like I think a lot of us do that do our weeklies, more armor shards are also going to be a reasonable choice for her. But then in our last 2 slots, we do have 2 Tau purple shards, which are the equilibrium effect, which is health pickups give energy and energy pickups give health. This is really, really good on her. If you are not using these, you probably do want to include equilibrium in the build, but we'll talk about that as it is quite a boost to her energy economy. I will note that even just one of these is plenty to keep her going. 2 is a little bit overkill, but for me personally, I prefer a little bit of overkill. Now, to get into the actual build proper, this is a removal of horses. We are no longer using Dagath's 4. We are instead replacing that with Breach Surge, which leads to the question, well, how are you killing enemies? And that is that Breach Surge actually has quite a bit of synergy with Wyrd Scythes whenever you're combining them with your Doom procs. And it is actually another circle AoE, which is what Wyrd Scythes is, to be able to spread Doom effectively and affect a lot of enemies. And Breach Surge is a blind, which gives us a decent little addition to our survivability to go with our Get Out of Jail Free card on Grave Spirit. Now, the elephant in the room with what I've seen a lot of people build Dagath as is that I am not using Spectral Spirit. Spectral Spirit is fine, but I find that the benefits for this is essentially just that you don't have to use your 2 to spread Doom, and spreading Doom isn't a hugely negative consideration in this build as it currently stands, so I really don't feel like we need this, and this will mostly just use up your Get Out of Jail Free card instead of like you'll be invincible for the time that you have on Grave Spirit. In this case, it would be like 12 seconds, and then you have the 25-second cooldown, and your kills can reduce that. But kills outside of spectral form means that you're then doing like Doom application and stuff, and it's kind of not great. I prefer just to be able to turn the 3 on, and if it triggers, then I heal back to full. I'm invincible for 12 seconds, and I can solve whatever problems are around me. Then you combine that with just like the kind of spam casty nature of this build, and you get a bunch of shields back with Brief Respite and Augur Reach, and you're usually not having problems. Instead, we've opted to do just like a little bit of health tanking, which at most levels is going to make you pretty much totally invincible. As like, you know, in the vast majority of content, if you can be invincible, would you die for 12 seconds? Within the next 25 seconds, things are probably not going to be very dangerous for you. If you have 1500 health, you're using adaptation. You have the DR from the armor that we have, which is 50% to start. And of course, we are also doing double duty on Number Vitality, as it's kind of more of a strength mod in this case, because with the health that Dagath has at 1500 with this mod in, we're actually using Arcane Bellicose to convert that into even more strength, and it gives us about 37% strength, so it's better than most strength mods we could put in here. At really no real downside, because this is also giving effectively like 11%, because its set bonus on Umbral Intensify is powering it up. With that, we are also on Molt Augmented, and after Molt Augmented, we are a bit over 300% strength, so quite a lot of strength to go around. It is notable in this build that I did mention that you do need to include equilibrium somewhere if you are not using the purple shards, and I think that the place for that, and it's the reason why Brief Respite is in here, is you can remove Augur Reach, move Stretch over here, and then just like throw equilibrium into this slot, and that is perfectly doable. You don't absolutely have to have like, you know, the 175% range. It's definitely very, very nice. But it is also worth noting that because we have Augur Reach here, if you don't care about the additional shield gain from Brief Respite, you could actually also swap this out for a number of different auras. Brief Respite I found is like still one of the better ones, but having Burst Projection here, Energy Siphon here, a few different things can be in this slot and be totally reasonable additions. And then we are of course on PSF. This is, again, not needed, but very nice. You can definitely make this build much, much cheaper by just, like, removing this and just keeping this slot empty. I know a lot of people don't want to invest in a non-prime Warframe that heavily, so that is definitely the first thing I would drop is going to be PSF, as usually you can keep yourself out of trouble by just rolling around. With that, though, that's pretty much what's going on. We have a big battery with Prime Flow, and Prime Continuity is kind of negating some of the negative of Transient Fortitude, giving us that over 10 seconds on Grave Spirit and a reasonable enough duration on the rest of our abilities. And that's pretty much what's up. Now, the actual way that this goes down and works is pretty simple. You do the normal Dagath things where you turn your 3 on, because you got to make sure that you have all of the buffs from it, first and foremost. But if we just spawn in these level 230 guys as usual, the kind of loop is you want to always be casting Breach Surge, throw out Doom, and then turn your 1 on. And your 1 will go out, hit the enemies, and then Breach Surge will start going off. And just casting your 1 on enemies that are affected by Breach Surge is going to create a lot of like sparks, inflict them with the viral procs, and the sparks will seek and kill enemies that are viral procced and being murdered by all of the slash procs and all of that good business. It's a pretty simple game plan. I will note, we are going to be testing this in the usual place, which is the Kuva Fortress. The Kuva Fortress is actually one of the worst places for this build, as some of the low ceilings will actually catch the sparks off of Breach Surge. But even with that downside being considered, this does generally do about 100 KPM, which is quite nice. I will note that it is fairly active, as you do need to, like, keep your 1 cast going. But launching this, like, these down a hallway and, like, hitting a bunch of enemies over and over, as they do have infinite enemy punch through, is pretty satisfying. So yeah, that's basically the loop. Is you're going to hit 4, you're going to hit 2, you're going to hit 1. You could even do it in a separate order if you want to. I think the casting speed does enable you to, like, hit 4, 1, and then 2, because your 1 won't have fired off yet, so you can actually prime last. But a little bit of that is, like, the cast speed changing up what you can, like, fit in conveniently in different spots. But yeah, that's what's up with the new Dagath stuff. Let's run it through the usual test and show it off a bit. All right, jumping into tab. Now, I did not want to oversell this build, but it is something you're probably going to see in this mission, and that is that this setup can spike pretty hard on certain damage instances. It'll commonly do like a couple 100,000 damage, but it can spike up and do like just like 10 million plus sometimes, depending on how like everything gets layered. So if you see that, which you likely will, note that it's not like it's always doing like 10 million damage to every enemy, whether they're armored or not, and so on and so forth. Is a consideration that is like the spikiness that you kind of get out of Breach Surge sometimes, and it's not like just going to be the usual everyday experience of like what's gonna go on. You know what I mean? You get the sides above their heads, you do your 1 to them, get some Breach Surge going. We will need like a few Xmas to get us started here. It gets a little bit of that energy built up off of our starting here. Death Cube, of course, helping quite a bit with just icing these enemies. Put this out there. You can also stand near the enemies, and like while they're spinning around you, they will take the damage up from that, which is worth noting. Death Cube kind of enables you to do that a little bit more aggressively if you want to, which you usually do. But yeah, just like, stacking up viral procs. Enemies can't really handle, like, being blind, plus being frozen, plus being doomed, plus viral, plus L, plus ratio, the usual business. You can see now that we have a start to this, it's pretty much not going to end. It's also worth noting, I think a thing that a lot of people forget is that while you are, like if you were to, like, die, quote-unquote, like, if you triggered Grave Spirit, whenever you're in that form, every enemy just drops health orbs. So that means that you're going to leave with full health and full energy whenever you're done with that mode in almost all cases. So that is a consideration for sure. Yeah, we can get to the point where we can really just, like, go whole hog on this. Where in most instances of enemies will fill us back up on energy. And you can see that, like, at close range, we can actually, like, you know, saw blade it a little bit. Kind of do a a better version of Eureli's 3 impression, I guess. Which is pretty fun. You can see it doing, like, 2 million on our breach surges and stuff there and things like that. And it doesn't, like, look that crazy. Our spawn rate is actually kind of weirdly low right now. We are at only 182 kills, which is a little odd for this. The enemies seem to, like, not really want to be spawning. Kind of thin crowds for what I'm used to. Usually whenever I turn around in, like, an area like this whole room is, like, completely full. We just got a weird tile set. Might move on to another room here, actually. Try and remedy that a bit. Getting some, like, less aggression even from these enemies, which feels strange. Like a bad spawn tile here or something. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this tile being, like, a weird cap like this can sometimes cause that. Some strangeness. Because that room is, like, very good for Warframes that don't have line of sight problems. But Dagath is unfortunately not one of them. Everything that we're doing here is, like, very line of sight affected. So it's something we're just going to have to deal with. Might be just a lower test. But, as I mentioned, it's not like this build is too crazy. It is, like, I think a more effective thing to be doing than her horse's builds. Her horse's build really, really locks you down very hard. There's a 22 million. There's those spikes that I was talking about. And I think it's bad to be, like, just casting that long. It is also worth noting I am, like, avoiding, like, just, like, adding in shooting enemies to this. I'm just trying to show off what, like, the actual build itself does. Because, of course, like, while enemies are blinded and every other status effect is happening to them, you can just shoot them in the head very easily. With, like, your Furus or whatever, pop it up, and then just, like, start blasting with the enhanced critical damage you're going to get out of her 3 at all times. And just, like, you know, work that into, like, this and, like, combine that with the usual good breach surge things. And that'll make things, of course, much more compelling on any given Warframe. Whenever you are combining them with just things they work even okay with. And it turns out the generic buffs that Dagath gives out kind of work on every single weapon that you'd, well, at least the ones you'd want to be using. By and large. Yeah, it's certainly not the craziest thing in the world. Especially not whenever the tile set is not cooperating. It's maybe the worst run of this I have ever had. These enemies just aren't even coming down here with any speed at all. They're just lackadaisical over here. We'll go up here and pop this.
Is making progress. This will help our cause. Extraction is available.
But it'd be like that sometimes. Sometimes you get a survival where the enemies just don't care much about attacking you, I guess. Get rid of this Jade XMI here. Yeah, one of the things that is neat about the ability, though, is these scythes above their heads. Whenever Dagath has done enough damage during their lifespan to actually kill the enemy that they're floating over, they will automatically come down, and you can, like, make some interesting things happen with that, because it does take any damage that Dagath does to it into account. So, like, even if you're, like, shooting them, it will, like, kill them early whenever you do that, which is kind of an interesting one. Acolytes are a bit of a weird one, because sometimes they die instantaneously, like, they just evaporate. And that's usually whenever, like, you're in a crowd that is, like, breach surged. But other times they will just be in, like, a weird spot. But the scythe will do its thing to assist as well. Regardless, they're usually not a problem. And any Warframe that has a, like, you know, Dagath's 12 seconds of invincibility, like, if you have any kind of a decent weapon, an Acolyte doesn't survive for 12 seconds, so it's pretty easy. This is another one of those areas where the low ceilings I was talking about are not helping us. It just is, this tile in general is not a great one. It's like 5 million damage, though, which is funny. Let's see if we can head this way and do a little bit more. Yeah, I think our damage, yeah, we're at like 500 kills, which is not great. But hey, we don't always show the ideal test scenarios. Like if it's 100 kpm in testing, but then the one of the recordings is lower than that because of weird tile set stuff, I think that's valuable to show off too. And I already mentioned that this tile set is already a bit unforgiving to the way that we're dealing damage here. You can see this kind of more open room. Those Breach Surge Sparks are a lot more aggressive and able to just like kind of do whatever, which really benefits her a lot. Yeah, Breach Surge Sparks having an open ceiling, or not even open, just like a vaulted ceiling. Goes a pretty long way. And of course, most enemies, when blinded, are pretty ineffectual to stop you. Not to mention, like, the increased critical damage we get off of enemies being doomed and everything, which will work even if you're using your gun. So that is a benefit, too, if you just, like, are going to shoot guys, which, you know, most of the time you will. Second Acolyte in here soon, I would hope. Yeah, not in much danger, that's for sure. We can run up to some of these groups and weird sight them down. 7 million. It does do good damage, but the spikiness of the numbers that you sometimes see, you're not just like dumping that on everybody. As you can see, there's a lot of like lower numbers than that you're going to see more often. But it is like, you know, fun that it can spike up that high. And I do believe that those spikes are usually what causes like the Acolyte interactions, where it's like, ah, yes, the Acolyte instantly evaporated because he got hit in the head with a 10 million damage spark off of one of these other guys. Status immune enemies are sometimes a pain, so there's that. A little more spammy. Which you can, as I said, like, with these extra equilibrium shards, you can be a little bit more spammy with the one and just toss it off, like, constantly. Okay, we are like 741. Yeah, I think this is the lowest test I've done with her. But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. We're not clip farming for TikTok in this one. No, who would do that though? But yeah, I will say one of the things about this as we kind of exit here, yeah, 786. Yeah, that's the lowest I've done with her. Lowest I did before this was like low 900. This is much lower than that. But I will say that like this build is one like Wyrd Scythe's augment away. Like if you gave the Wyrd Scythes like chaining or like the ability to like hang out longer and like continually do their thing, or like just like be able to cast a bunch of them and have them be bouncing, some kind of like augment just to make Wyrd Scythes and the thing they're doing more consistent or like higher damage, would really probably make this build very, very real, very, very fast. Right now, you know, it's the thing that's better than the horses stuff that you could be doing, that kept her from getting into C rank. And I think that's just fine. Get out of jail free card, nice crit bonus, and just a general ability to deal damage and proc viral and stuff on enemies with your abilities. It's not bad. Would definitely be worse. So ends today's video. Thanks so much to all of the patrons for supporting not only this channel, but also the new Soulframe Scholar channel. It is much appreciated as that channel gets started. And thanks very much to our $10 patrons, Atheon, Ith, Albern Drake, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Babyhoot, Arcus, Nuven, Automatic, Brutus Salazar, Canolathra, Bob World, Colleen Smith, Dylan Dworsky, Azrain, James Hawthorne, GC4 Science, Josh, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Mike Kiesman, Mikkel, Michta, Nerve, Ruby, S267, Sanyu, Cezon, Sharp247, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Waldad01, Seraphir, and Zero Weebs Plan, and of course all of the $5 and $2 patrons as well. Your support is very much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.